Welcome to Vape News Radio, the voice of vaping. In each show, we share the latest about regulations and things you need to know, plus upcoming conferences and fests, along with interviews with the movers and shakers in this fabulous vape space. Are you looking to get into this ever-expanding marketplace? Do you want to master this industry? Listen up as Norm Bauer, the vape mentor, shares it all. And here's your host, Norm Bauer.
Hello and welcome to Vape Radio, the voice of vaping, and this is show number 82. I'm Norm Bauer with Vape Mentors, and I wanted to remind you that our online teaching program called Vape U3, Vape Shop Masterclass Summit, is available as replay, and the price is going to be going up shortly. Over 4 days, 20 hours, we talked to over 20 different instructors. If you have a vape shop and want to be one of the survivors, please join us and participate in Vape U3. We cover marketing, sales, technology, regulations, and so much more. It was free at the time, but if you missed it, be sure you get it while the price is still just $197. On to our show. D-Day, also known as August 8th, has passed and the rumblings continue. Many are still unsure what this all means, and everyone seems to be playing ball for now. Here's what I sense is going on. The FDA comes out with this insane, unrealistic, and way too over-the-top regulation. Everyone falls into place, but the problem is that the line that we need to stand behind is a little bit vague and obscure. People are asking, exactly what must we do or not do? The sampling question is one that comes up quite a bit, and we've addressed that in a webinar with AppCard. Many liquid manufacturers are still unclear of the next deadline that's coming up just a few months away in December. And what I'm starting to see is pushback. People are now asking, how will the FDA know if I'm doing things right or not? Do they have spies on the street? What enforcement powers do they have? We're actually getting lists together of some of the shops that have been getting FDA letters, and the most notable thing that they're after right now is underage sales, so we actually support them in that. The bottom line is that many are going to start being subversive, doing things on the sly, seeing what they can and will get away with. It's going to be interesting to watch. As a matter of fact, today's interview will talk a lot about regulations and the realities that are in place post-August 8th. Tony Abboud with Vapor Technology Association, also known as VTA, will be joining us in just a few moments. Some other things I want to share. There's a movie that everyone is talking about called A Billion Lives, and it's almost live. The movie was directed by Aaron Biebert, which documents the realities of the vaping battle, and officially premiered in Aaron's hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and was also shown at Vape Jam, Oklahoma, an event in Paris, and soon in Los Angeles. Now they're going for a national launch, and we will be calling out to you and looking for some help. I'll be interviewing Aaron on a future show and talk about that and how you can be part of the movement. And finally, I wanted to provide some insight on the international vape scene. I was in Europe twice this summer and spoke in Amsterdam, Prague, and Warsaw. I spoke with vapors from all over the European continent and especially from Russia and Kiev, and here's my take. The Russian market, it's ripe for expansion. I see it as being where we were in the U.S. from a marketing perspective. There was very little vaping that I saw on the street and very few vape shops. But smokers, my gosh, smokers were everywhere. I was shocked to see cigarette vending machines on the streets in Germany, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It truly left me speechless. I also want to remind you that we are opening a new division called PMTA Advisors to help you with your options and your choices and give you guidance moving forward. This is primarily for those of you that are in the industry of making liquids right now. After the interview, I'm going to have some closing remarks, but pay attention for the next 30 minutes. I think you're going to find this interesting. Welcome back to Vape Radio. This is Norm Bauer, the voice of vaping, and today we have a very special interview with a gentleman by the name of Tony Abboud. He is with an organization called the VTA, the Vapor Technology Association, which some of you may be familiar with, but I'm going to say that a lot of you are not familiar with because it's relatively new. So rather than me try to tell you what the VTA is, I'm going to get it directly from the horse's mouth. So Tony, welcome to Vape Radio.
Hey, Norm, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate everything you do for getting out the word on what's happening with respect to the vapor industry.
Well, I appreciate that. So let's talk about what VTA is, because In its broadest sense, some people might consider you an advocacy organization, but would you consider yourself an advocacy organization? So tell us what VTA is all about and what its function and what its role is, Tony.
VTA, the Vapor Technology Association, is a professional advocacy group. We are focused on executing a strategy that is intent on saving the vapor industry from top to bottom. And you said that we were new. I guess we are relatively new, but the players, myself included, our board members have been involved in this space for years and have been leading the charge on the key policy decisions and strategic initiatives at the federal level and in some cases at the state level for quite some time. So while the organization itself might be new, the members that comprise it are certainly not.
I believe you just had or are just about to have your 1-year anniversary. Is that about right?
Yeah, we're coming up with the first year anniversary of a meeting, our first meeting that we conducted in October of last year. You're right. So I guess there's a candle to be lit at some point. But we formally launched in January. And from then we took off and started gaining new members. And what was very interesting is that the strategy that we had put in place got some traction, and we were excited about the very first vaping victory. I call it the first pro-vaping piece of legislation to move in the U.S. Congress, which the Cole-Bishop Amendment that was part of the House Ag Appropriations Bill that passed out of the House Appropriations Committee back in April. So, from the short time that we've been kind of doing this as this VTA, we were able to have an impact right away.
So this Cole-Bishop bill, and again, those of us in the industry are familiar with it, but maybe for those of you who are listening who are not familiar with it, can you tell us a little bit more about it? Because it seems like a lot of people in the vaping industry have a lot riding on this bill. And again, just to bring everyone up to speed, on August 8th, the FDA passed their deeming regulations. So now, for better or for worse, we as in the vaping community are considered part of the tobacco world. So that means we are under a veil of certainly negativity and also huge restrictions when it comes to media and outreach and a lot of the things that we do. And most people who are in the vaping community want vaping to be set aside as its own separate category. So maybe you can share with us, Tony, a little bit what Cole Bill is all about and why it is so significant.
Absolutely. Right now, when everybody anticipated that the FDA was going to issue its final deeming regulations, we didn't know exactly when that was going to happen. They had been out there for, over 2 years. They had received hundreds of thousands of comments. Our companies that are part of our association went and met with OMB, and we explained to them the problems that were associated with the proposed regulations at that time, as did many other companies from across the United States. They went and met with the relevant federal agencies to say, hey, there's a big problem here. And then, as you pointed out, August 8th, the deeming regulation became effective, but it was in May, a little bit earlier in May, that they actually announced the final regulations. And the problem with those regulations, the fundamental problem with them, is that merely by defining our products that do not contain tobacco as a tobacco product, the FDA has, with one fell swoop, in a one-size-fits-all approach, basically destined our product to effectively be run out of the market. And that's an unacceptable outcome for anybody that's in business. And it's frankly an unacceptable outcome from a public policy perspective. And it's unfortunate that after 2+ years and hundreds of thousands of comments, that the FDA's approach in this regard lacked any foresight whatsoever, lacked any vision, and refused to acknowledge that this is a groundbreaking product, something that is different. So what we're left with is an August 8th date that sets in motion the most onerous of regulations, which is that every company that manufactures and wants to maintain the products that were on the market as of August 8th must file this onerous pre-market tobacco application with the FDA. And they must do so within 2 years of August 8th, 2016. So, Norm, here's where it gets really dicey, because the reality is, and the FDA has suggested that there are very few applications that they will be able to actually approve. And the reason is that the standards that they have set are higher than they've ever been before. And the net result is going to be that only a handful of companies, probably the largest companies in the world that sell tobacco products, are going to be able to afford and have the regulatory structure and compliance structure in place to comply with these regulations. But virtually every small or mid-sized business is out of luck because no one in that position can afford to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not up to $1 million per SKU, just to justify and keep the products it has on the market.
So with all that being said, if we were to put our Sherlock Holmes detective hat on, that would mean that maybe some large companies with very deep pockets have their fingerprints all over the impetus behind passing this bill. So is it a correct assumption to think that there has been influence by, big tobacco? Hate to bring the BT word into it, but do we feel that big tobacco was a major influencer in the fact that FDA seemed to have disregarded the hundreds of thousands of comments and the obvious social good it's done, along with the health improvements that it's made over the last several years?
It's really hard to say, why the FDA made its decisions. Everybody's comments are available for review, and with a few exceptions, the comments were relatively consistent. What's important now is that everybody that is involved in the industry, whether they sell tobacco products or don't sell tobacco products, are unified behind the importance of changing this predicate date. And that is absolutely critical. Because at the end of the day, what we need is to have that kind of force in order to make this change in Congress. And getting back to your original question, Norm, about why this is so important. If we do not change the predicate date, then any company that has expended hundreds of thousands of dollars getting new products to the market as of August 8th is going to be required to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, simply to keep those products on the market. And that money has to start going out the door relatively soon. The countdown clock is already ticking. And so if we do not push back this predicate date, it places an overwhelming majority of companies in this industry in a completely untenable position. And I think what it does is it effectively turns the industry over to only those biggest companies that could possibly have the financial wherewithal to actually comply, or at least attempt to comply.
Yeah, so the date that Tony is mentioning is called the predicate date, but a lot of people might know it as the grandfather date, which is February 15th, 2007. And what it really says is that if your product was on the market prior to that date, then you are already pre-approved. You are grandfathered in. But any new products that have come up since then, which is 99.99% of all the products, because there's virtually nothing on the market that's been created prior to then. So what it means is that for all intent and purposes, here we are recording this in October of 2016. This means that basically we're not going to see any new products, no liquids, no hardware, no accessories, because the broad definition of tobacco is so vast that almost anything that touches a mod or can touch a mod, even something as silly as a wick or a lighter for that matter. I mean, the rules are very, very stringent on one hand, but yet very vague on the other. So there's a lot of holes here in the deeming regulations, which is part of the issue. So the reality of it is that there was a huge rush to market, and you had to get your liquid on the market or your hardware on the market by August 8th. And Tony, I can speak to what the marketplace did as a reaction. So, I'm out there on the streets. I talk to people all over the place. During the month of July and during the month of August, the entire industry literally acted as though their dog was just dying and grandmother was on deathbed. I mean, everyone was just really, really, I hate to say depressed, but there was a real negative air in the room. So here's what's interesting. The way I kind of equate it is that everyone was quaking in their boots about the FDA's restrictions because we've been thinking about this and talking about this for years. 2 years ago, the previous version of the deeming regulations were actually put out over 2 years ago. So we kind of knew that what was happening and when it was going to be happening. But what I'm seeing, and I'd love your take on this if you hear anything, is that the market seems to be bouncing back. They're kind of like resigning themselves not to failure, but to the fact that they aren't as fearful of the FDA because they don't think that the FDA can, one, monitor every darn thing that everyone does, and two, they don't really think they're going to be able to enforce anything. So what have you seen in the people you talk to as far as the attitude and the optimism or pessimism of the marketplace right now going forward?
So it's interesting. Your observations are interesting because you said two things. One relates to kind of this notion of having any innovations with respect to safety and what's going to happen to that going forward. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think there was an incredible retrenchment amongst folks that are in the industry, and I think felt as if they were out of control. And frankly, if you're in business, the worst thing that can happen to you is not having any sense of predictability. Businesses make budgets. They know if they spend money on advertising, they know what that return is going to be. They understand the importance of inventory and how that inventory moves in and out of a normal business in a business cycle. This regulation has created such uncertainty that I think companies were completely in flux and they didn't know exactly how to deal with it. So I think what they did is they just attacked and did what they could do and control what was in front of them. And that was, well, if August 8th is going to be the cutoff date, then what we can control is getting as many new products into the market as possible by August 8th. And that's where they went. I think they kind of pulled back and figured out exactly what they needed to do to get those products to market and started to take other steps towards compliance. But here's the problem. You can consider that to be an optimistic approach, right? Because they're saying, okay, we're going to do the things that need to be done. We think we can make this happen. We think we can stay in the market. And I love that. The dose of reality is simply this. Any of those companies who are filing the applications for pre-market tobacco approval have a 5% or less chance of success.
Wow.
And
not good odds.
No. And some people say, I usually say 10%, and everybody always corrects me and say it's 5 or less. And I think that the reality is that with that facing these folks, then what we have is a false sense of optimism. And that false sense of optimism is we can get this done. And everybody should try to comply, but the problem is that the FDA has set up a scheme with which we can't comply. And so that is why passing this Cole-Bishop language is so important. And it's so important not because it's going to save the industry in the long term. It will save the industry in the short term, but it's so important because it's going to do a number of things in terms of positive regulations for this industry that will also change the predicate date such that companies do not have to spend millions of dollars, which they may or may not have, just to simply keep their existing products on the market.
So what that means is that anything that was on the market as of August 8th, because that is the new proposed predicate date, correct? August 8th of this year.
That's correct.
Yeah, so what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that if a product was on the market, if in fact it got in under the wire, then they are able to stay on the market, assuming that everything else they do is above board and it's a healthy product and it's done with good GMP standards and what have you. But now, new products that are going to be coming on the market might be a little bit more challenging. So in the world of legislature, the world of politics and everything, because why don't you share with everyone a little bit about your political background, because it's pretty impressive and you are not new to this. I hate to call you a lobbyist because I'm not sure if that has a positive connotation or not, but share with everyone a little bit more about your background as far as it does. I guess people look at lobbyists as being influencers, but in and of itself, it's not such a bad thing as long as they're influencing the side that you agree to.
Well, look, there's bad apples in every profession, right? So It doesn't matter what label you give them. Okay. The reality is that lobbyists do play an important role. And this industry is a great example, okay? Professional lobbyists who are lobbying on behalf of the vapor industry are, in fact, doing something that is a public service. We have a government at this point and a public health community, the organized, entrenched interest groups who have decided for their own personal or political reasons to denigrate this product category, to suppress this product category, and to do so to the benefit of, I think, pharmaceutical companies that have cornered the market on smoking cessation, and they've done so with products that are completely ineffective, yet they are the players.
And dangerous, too. I mean, you look at those Chantix commercials, and it would scare the crap out of me to want to take it.
It is disturbing. There's no question about that. But these are the products that the FDA has said have gone through their glorified procedure and have been now justified, and the only products that folks should rely upon to help them reduce their smoking. The notion all this time, that is what the message is from the public health advocates, is absurd, and it's simply wrong. So in this case, the lobbyists I think, are wearing white hats, the lobbyists for the vapor industry. And those white hats, hopefully, will win the day.
Nice.
You asked a little bit about my background.
Yes, sir.
So I'm a practicing attorney. I've been a litigator for over 20 years, defending businesses inside the courtroom, and a lobbyist for 12 years, defending companies that are in heavily regulated industries. My entire professional career has been to defend and protect businesses and business associations. And I've been involved in these heavily regulated industries that involve tobacco and involve vapor for a number of years, and have been helping to grow and set up the Vapor Technology Association because the industry itself needed a national trade association that was professionally based and professionally run with a board of very experienced folks from the industry who have deep public policy background, deep FDA regulatory background, and deep state public policy background itself. And so that's the Vapor Technology has been filling. That's been kind of the overarching purpose of Vapor Technology Association. And, we've just been trying to have a consistent and clear message and get that out to the community, because the strategies that we're employing are strategies that we know can and will work. We just need to make sure that everybody is pulling in the same direction.
Well, I've had several conversations with Gregory Connerly, who is the founder of the American Vaping Association, the AVA, about Cole Bishop, and he is, like you, very optimistic, and he does not believe it's going to pass this year, but he does think it's going to happen sometime in the early part of 2017. Do you have any insight, Tony, about when you think this is actually going to come up for a vote and how long it would actually take to go into effect?
Two different questions. So the first question is whether or not it's going to pass this year. So we have been targeting from the middle of the summer and expecting that we would have an opportunity to pass the language in December of this year. We anticipated that, and our intelligence from our DC lobbyists told us that the Congress was in all likelihood going to pass a continuing resolution. There was some talk about them pushing that continuing resolution, which is basically a faux budget, that pushing that up until next year into the new Congress. We had been pushing and asking that it be only continuing resolution through the first part of December. And that is in fact what they've done. So just 2 nights ago, both the House and the Senate passed the continuing resolution up through December 9 and got out of town. So that leaves about 14 days after the election, congressional days, where they will have to be negotiating a budget. Alternatively, they will have to then extend the continuing resolution, which is not something they wanted to do in the first instance. So there's lots of different ways, depending upon how the election plays out politically, for how this might go. But the goal right now is to see that the Cole Bishop Amendment is passed with a budget bill in December of this year. That budget bill would have to then be signed by the president, because it's the budget that would go into effect. And again, the United States would not have a budget after December 9 unless they take action. So if all goes as planned, the budget is agreed to and passed and then signed by the president on or around December 9, at which point then it would take effect.
Well, this could be one of Obama's last good things that he does for the industry if he's able to get this done before he leaves office, right?
I think that's right. But the reality is that this issue is not going to be a tail that wags the dog, so to speak. The reason that our strategy from late last year until now has been to include this language in a budget bill or an appropriations bill is because as a standalone, politically, it would be extremely difficult to move. Very, very few standalone bills move in this Congress, period. There are thousands of bills that are filed by the hundreds of representatives and senators. However, very few of these individual bills actually move through the traditional process. And that's just the political reality in which we live. That is why our strategy has been focused on and was developed around appropriation strategy, which is tying our issue to an appropriations bill, because one of the few bills that actually have to pass and that Congress has to act on are budget bills. Otherwise, the government shuts down.
Got it. So 2 questions as we kind of bring this to a close. So let's just play optimist here and assume that Cole Bishop goes through, because this has been the primary focus of the VTA, of course, the Vapor Technology Association. And again, if you're just joining us, we're interviewing Tony Abboud, who's the Executive Legislative Director of VTA. So after this particular battle, I'd like you to tell me, do you have any other battles that need to be fought? And then secondly, for those people who are listening, what is it, if anything, should they do to help the cause? Because we have 2 different types of listeners here. We have the vapor who is not in the industry, who obviously supports the industry as a consumer. And then, of course, we have the businesses who are involved with the industry who have a very, very strong vested interest in it. So question number 1 is, where do you see the next battle, if you see that at all? And secondly, what is it that you would like our listeners to do, and how can they get a hold of you and get involved?
Okay, so we're not a one-trick pony, which is a good thing for the industry. When we set up the Vapor Technology Association, we set it up with 3 principal pillars. One is that we were going to do outstanding federal lobbying. The other one was that we were going to have an integrated professional DC-based public affairs campaign. And the third one was that we were going to do coordinated state lobbying around the country. Those 3 pillars are what make up the most effective national trade associations. So in addition to executing the federal strategy, for which we have multiple components working right now, and I'll talk about what you can do to be involved in a second, we are also executing our multi-state strategy. Here's why, Norm. We can win in December on the predicate date, and in January, multiple states around the country are going to be filing flavor ban bills, excise tax bills, anything to go after our industry. I think they're going to come after us at the state level with a vengeance. And we cannot sit back. So what VTA has done has been planning for that. We've been building our network of state independent vapor associations to help develop our network in the states. And just recently, we brought on board a state affairs manager who is a professional lobbyist and lawyer who's been defending the vape industry at the state level and who has been charged with doing 3 principal things. 1, executing a multi-state strategy to defend the vapor industry. 2, to draw together and multiple state associations to help them coordinate and collaborate and make sure all their state lobbyists are communicating with each other and do so on a regular basis. And then 3, to help develop and build these state associations. Our goal is to build strong state associations. Our goal is not to just suck members to VTA. What we want to do is build these strong state associations because we know that the lifeblood of this industry is at that level in the states, in these vape shops, and we want to see a strong state presence because of what's going to be happening at the state level. So here's how you can get involved. We are doing a number of things right now. One of the things that we've done is we've launched the very first social media campaign that's directed at Congress for the vapor industry. It's called #WeAreVapor. If you go to our website, we have an advocacy website that we launched last month, which is called SaveVapororg. And if you go to that website, you'll go right to our #WeAreVapor page. As part of that, you can read how to participate in We Are Vapor, which is a great and simple way to leverage your social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, to post a picture of you and your colleagues and your business on Facebook, but also tag your state representative, your federal representative, and your senators. Our public affairs team said, you know what, the vapor industry is great at social media, but everybody's talking to each other. It's time we turn our attention and deliver those messages directly to congressional pages. So the instructions are all right there at SaveVapororg. Then in combination with that, we've launched what's called a Thunderclap campaign, which all you have to do is basically 3 clicks to join. And that link is also on that very same page I mentioned to you a second ago at SaveVapororg. The Thunderclap campaign takes the We Are Vapor campaign and it amplifies it, and it pushes out one message on a particular day at a particular time through every social media channel that signs up. And so the goal and the objective is to get our hashtags, hashtag We Are Vapor, hashtag Support Cole Bishop, trending. And then with that, and with that enormous publicity, then our public affairs team and our lobbyists take that information and share it with Congress and share it with media outlets and bring much greater visibility to the issue itself. So we're excited about that because it's something that everybody can participate in without having to jump through a lot of hoops. All you need is your computer or your cell phone, take a picture in front of your favorite vape shop if you're a consumer, or if you're a business, go outside, take that picture and post it at the same messages that we've been promoting. Then, on top of that, make sure that you sign up on our website so that you are on our mailing list. Because what's going to happen is as we're rolling out our strategy, we are using and relating to people that are in our network to meet with key legislators who are going to be critical to making decisions at the federal level. At the same time, if you have a state association, you should be contacting us to see how you can fit in and collaborate with our multi-state team that's working together. We just had a call this week with, I think, 12 different states represented, and we're just getting started. So that's an exciting piece of it also.
Well, this is Vape Radio Show number 82, and Radio Show number 81 was an interview with Cynthia Cabrera, who's now with the Kading Group and was formerly the executive director of SAFADA, and we spoke about some of the dangerous things that are happening in individual states, specifically the new tax in Pennsylvania, the 40% tax on wholesale products, which is supposed to go into effect fairly soon. And in California, we have Proposition 56, which would also increase product prices by about 2/3, and that is scheduled to be on the ballot in November. So the bottom line is, Tony, I think that you have job security. There is such a thing, and the battle will probably rage on. And we can only hope that some of these voices, including yours and VTA and all the other advocacy organizations, that they're heard at the legislative level, as well as the consumers at large. So if you want to leave any other contact information as far as email address, or basically just use the hashtags that you referenced earlier for contacting you?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing for folks to do right now is go to SaveVapororg. It's our advocacy website. It has a bunch of tools on there. You can sign up for our mailing list. It has our contact information. It has a link to our main website, which will also tell you much more about VTA. It has all of our guidance documents on those sites. It has our news releases. We're putting so much out on social media and through our network. We think people just need to sign up and stay informed because it's going to be happening over the next 6 to 8 to 12 weeks.
Very nice. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us here on Vape Radio. And ladies and gentlemen, do not go away. We're going to be back in just one moment. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Tony as much as I do. You know, he's a glass half full type of guy, just like I am, and it's nice to know that our joint optimism is well placed and that others feel that we still have a strong horse in the race. We'll have to see how this all plays out. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or comments, send me a note to norm@vapementors.com, and don't forget that VapeU 3, the Vape Shop Masterclass Summit, is available for those that plan on being in the business for the long term. Over 4 days, we spoke with over 20 speakers and provided 20-plus hours of education from some of the most amazing thought leaders out there. This wraps up Vape Radio Show number 82, and thanks again for listening. Do you have a topic you'd like to hear, or do you have something you'd like to share, someone you'd like us to speak with? Send me a note to norm@vapementors.com. But before we leave, I want to make you all a great opportunity. Would you like to get your product, service, or message in front of our targeted vaping audience? Vape Radio is the #1 vape radio show in the world with more than 1.3 million downloads since 2014. We were one of the top 10 business podcasts of 2015 on Podbean and beat out more than 130,000 other shows. For just $750, you get your company integrated within 3 different vape radio shows, and we're looking for 2 more advertisers to fill our spot. How about you? Contact norm@vapementors.com. So now we're done. So until next time, vape on.